welcome to What Lingers, the podcast where we uncover the questions behind people's stories. I'm Cristian Figueroa.
And I'm Liz Melchor, and we are the team behind Storytelling Lisboa, where once a month, 10 storytellers get on stage in front of 200 people and tell true and personal stories related to a theme.
It is always a great event, but there is a catch. We always have lingering questions for the storytellers and no format to ask them. Until now.
In this second season of What Lingers, we invite storytellers to revisit and listen back to their original story from that night, and then sit down with us for a conversation to uncover what lingers for us all.
Just a heads up, the recording of the story you will hear comes from the actual stage of Storytelling Lisboa, so the sound might be a little bit fuzzy.
Okay, I'm super excited for this story because it's all about like those crushes that develop, or not even crushes, like that nonverbal, like soul connection where you see that person and you just like have this whole intense thing going on. And then it's like, what happens? Like what comes of that, you know?
Oh my God, I love this. Yes, this week's story, it's really something. It has something, a little bit of everything. Also, I'm really grateful for this storyteller. It was a really difficult story for him to share on stage, and still it was amazing. He was really nice. I love it. Has something, a little bit of spirituality, something about gay love and queerness. So yeah, it has a little bit of everything.
So Cristian, let's get into it. I want to turn it over to Zach for his story.
So I went through a lot this summer, like a lot of people. After being in the relationship that brought me to Portugal for 2 years, we went through a pretty nasty breakup. And then my dad made the bold, creative decision to die suddenly of a heart attack while my mom was on vacation at like a printmaking workshop in Mexico. So he's just in the house for a few days. So, I did what any self-respecting, newly bisexual, recently orphaned digital nomad would do. I went straight to a festival. Just straight to the festival. This wasn't the typical, like raving and dancing festival, actually. It was really incredible. It was, days of yoga and meditation and therapy and, mud pits and like swimming naked in the lake. It's wonderful. It's great. It's really incredible. But it was really intense because you would, you'd be in the room doing this like incredible, third eye awakening, or there'd be like a Russian therapist on ayahuasca screaming at you, and you would just be going through a lot. And it was a lot of like, I'm really raw at this point. My dad just died. The breakup just happened. I'm in like a new place. So you'd go into all these therapy moments and rip your heart open and like cry. And then you would, go out to the lake and like swim naked around beautiful people. And it was like this vacillation between the sheer beauty of those moments and then the intensity of the workshops. So it's a roller coaster. My heart is raw. It's ripped open. I'm vulnerable. And so, of course, I'm just falling in love with every person I see. Everyone's beautiful. Everyone's naked and free. Made even more beautiful by the sheer fact that they're doing the work, right? Because like that's really sexy to me. And I'm just like falling in love with every person I meet. And it's not a huge festival. It's about 2,000 people. So you start to run into the same people over and over. And there was this one guy in particular. We can call him Martin. And I just kept running into him. First it was like naked in the lake as, the mushrooms were kind of tickling the back of my brain, and me and my friend were dancing around him like a maypole and giggling and laughing, and like he's just beautiful and naked in the glistening sun, Wow, I'm in love. And then I would see him later at like a mealtime or this or that. And then Again, I would see him, we're in one of the therapy sessions, and the woman is yelling, okay, the person to your left, hug them, hug them like you have never been hugged before, hug them like you want your parents to hug you, hug them like you wanted your loved ones to hug you, like that hug you never received, like hug them harder, deeper, stronger. And you would do this. You'd walk around and she would say, okay, now, and you would go to the person to your left and like hug them, and here's this guy again. And so I'm hugging him, and between all of the connection and the everything, when she started saying, oh, hug this person like your parents never hugged you, oh my God, right? So, of course, I'm crying. I'm like getting really emotional. And he's kind of strong and really, butch in this way. But eventually, after he hears me crying into his arms, he breaks down. He starts crying. And so he's like crying into my shoulder. So now I'm really in love. Now it's just like undeniable. And but still, I don't say anything. One thing about being queer, it's always kind of hard, especially now. You don't really know if the person is like also queer, and is it going to be weird if I come on to you? And so I don't really, I don't really make a move or anything. I'm just like silently and secretly, passionately falling in love with this person, Martine. And this really came to a head when, I go to this next workshop, which was a Tantra workshop, which was the cosmic orgasm. Cosmic orgasm. And so I enter the tent, a little hopeful that I might run into this guy at some point, but whatever. I'm remaining open to just like being in the moment and experiencing it all. And I lay down and I look to my left, and of course there is Martine once more. He's right there, right next to me, and I'm like, this is just too much, but okay, strapping in, here we go. So, the Tantra teacher is saying, okay, now touch your face and caress your neck and caress your chest and caress your body and put your hand in your pants and start to touch yourself, and you hear everyone like kind of collectively moaning and groaning, and you're hearing all these sounds, and it's incredible, and it's just like you feel the energy of everyone in the room. You really feel this like cosmic collective orgasm starting to like take shape. And you're really supposed to stay inside yourself in this moment. You're supposed to be really kind of internal, but I can't help but I look over at this guy. And his hand is in his pants, and his eyes are closed. And I swear to you, in that moment, I felt it was the most erotic experience of my entire life. Really. And I've been through my fair share. I was a journalist documenting the BDSM culture in New York for years. I've been to, leather festivals and conferences and like all the fetish stuff. But this moment, this quiet moment where I didn't see any nudity at all, it was actually just seeing this person touch themselves with their eyes closed and connect with themselves in this like really emotional way. I swear it was the most erotic moment of my life, which was only made more intense because as I'm sort of sneaking a glance over at this person, I start to look up towards his face to see what's going on there. And in that moment, he kind of opens his eyes and they meet mine. So I really am just beyond myself. And I think, okay, now, Zach, this is too much. This is beyond the pale. At this point, you've really got to say something to this guy when this thing ends. Like, it's written, you've got to go back to, the tent and make this happen. And so eventually the cosmic orgasm comes to its conclusion. And the people start to stand up, and I start to think of, well, what can I say to this guy? And as I'm trying to form the sentence, he stands up and promptly goes over to this woman who becomes very clear as his wife. And I think, okay, I'm deflated a bit, but I'll soldier on. I'll go back and kind of lick my wounds and see what needs to happen here. It wasn't meant to be. I didn't say what I needed to say in the moment, but maybe that was right for what it needed to happen. Because, as the week would go on, I would actually went on to meet an incredible person, a woman, let's call her Mafalda. And me and Mafalda had a wonderful connection and actually spoke a lot at length for hours about everything, and actually both decided that it would be best to adapt this policy of, radical transparency and honesty. Like, hey, if we're feeling a certain thing, or like, let's talk about it. Let's continue to talk about it. which was the total opposite of the sort of non-relationship I had with Martine. And me and Mafalda still talk every day. We send each other voice notes constantly, and we talk all the time on the phone, and has actually become one of my nearest and dearest friends here in Portugal. And, I have to wonder if I did, have this connection with Martine, and I followed this person who was ultimately unavailable and had, kind of stepped in it in that way and connected with this person, if I would have missed out on connecting with Mafalda. And so, I guess my takeaway from this whole thing is that sometimes the unsaid, what doesn't happen, what's maybe not meant to happen, can really create space for exactly what needs to be heard. So that's my story, everybody.
Zach, thank you so much for being here again with us. Welcome to What Lingers. Thank you for sharing your story with us in Storytelling Lisboa. It's amazing to have you back. We love your story. But first, would you mind introducing yourself just for the audience listening at home?
It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks so much for having me on. My name is Zach. I am an artist living out in Lisbon. I've been here for a few years now. Big fan of storytelling events, but this was my first time telling a story. And it was really exciting for me. This was actually the first time I really did something like this. And I'm just really happy with how it went. And listening back to it now is funny and cathartic and sad. And yeah, a good time.
Okay, that surprises me a lot. That was your first story you ever told on a stage, because it was just really well done. And I know you said you were a journalist, so I'm assuming that influenced it. But you also were just so comfortable on stage, and we really connected with your story, and I was cracking up. And was that the first time that you reheard your story since telling it?
It is actually. I haven't been able to bring myself to listen to the full recording since then, just because I get a little embarrassed. But it was, that was the first time listening to the whole thing again.
Oh, no, totally. It is. It's like scary to listen to yourself, but I enjoyed watching you watch yourself because you were smiling a lot. And I think that response makes sense. So how was it that we've now forced you to watch it back with us?
I think I did great.
Yes, you did.
I really like that story. I worked on it a lot without memorizing it so much. I really worked on having a structure, having a takeaway, having a bit of a twist. I'm a big fan of storytelling podcasts. I'm like a longtime Moth listener, and I've been to a lot of storytelling events here in Lisbon. And just a big part of being queer is sitting around telling stories with your friends around a drink. So I have many years of experience doing that. But yeah, I'm really happy with how it went.
Yeah, it was beautifully structured. And so now we get to have a longer conversation, because I feel like every story opens questions for me. And I'm wondering, you briefly go over at the beginning, you'd just gotten out of this intense relationship. It sounded like you'd been in Portugal for a couple of years. Your father had just suddenly died. And I'm wondering if you can just elaborate a little bit of where you were exactly before you went to the festival.
Yeah, it was an intense year of transformation and change and emotion and heartache and heartbreak. So I originally moved to Portugal for this guy, basically. I came here on vacation. I met someone. I was ready to leave New York, where I was living at the time. And I was like, fuck it, let's just go on. Let's take the plunge. I'm going to move out here to Lisbon and live this new life. Don't recommend.
I have to ask, was he Portuguese or?
Yes, he's Portuguese. He was like a spiritual therapist that would weaponize the language of spirituality. If we got in an argument, he would be like, oh, like, you're only acting this way because you're like possessed by demons right now.
Oh, yeah.
There's an extraterrestrial entity in the room, and that's what's causing us to argue. Not my own narcissism or gaslighting. It's the ET in the room. Like, here's a crystal, that'll solve everything. Full on taping magnets to my temples.
Oh.
It was a whole thing. Which at first was like really intriguing to me. And I was like, wow, this mystical person. But the more intertwined we became, just the more toxic it became, and had a lot of anger issues and brought out a lot of anger issues in me. And so it just became really volatile. It was toxic. It was not great. I played my own role. It's not all one-sided. I'm sure there was stuff that I did that was not great. But I stayed in this relationship much longer than I needed to, because I felt trapped here in this new country. I didn't speak the language. I didn't really know how to get around. And so I was like, I'll stick it out until it just became too much. And so we broke up. And then, yeah, sometime around that similar timeline, I get the call from my sister that my father had passed, which was like devastating. And it was sudden and unexpected, but also not totally unexpected. I guess we assume he passed of a heart attack. Don't really know, but that's the most logical explanation. And was found like a day or two later. And yeah, so that really threw me through a loop.
Yeah, it's like you're in a new country and you have the loss of your relationship that sounded very complex. And then this huge loss of your father who from afar. And then festival time.
Yeah. What's crazy is I had booked this festival like 6 months prior. I booked this festival a long time ago, originally with the ex, was up his alley. Obviously, we're not going to go together now, but I'm like, you know what? This is actually exactly what I need right now. I'm like trying to deal with the spiritual, emotional chaos and loss of comes with losing a parent. And he was young, too. He was 67. And so I go to this festival. It's called Being Gathering. A few people in the audience could recognize that and like come up to me afterwards.
It's pretty famous in Portugal.
Yeah, so it's on the same grounds where Boom Festival is, but it's like the other year. And instead of being like as much of a party, it's, as I mentioned in the story, it's a lot of movement workshops and yoga and meditation and breathing and therapy. And then you swim in the lake and roll in the mud. It was amazing.
Nakedness.
A lot of I was naked a lot of this festival.
Sounds great. How many people? Just because I've never heard of it. How many people about? Like 100 or like 10?
No, it's like 2,000.
Oh my God.
But so this is 2,000 and it doesn't really feel like that many. You start seeing a lot of the same people and you really start to feel tight somehow.
Listening to you, I feel so much gratitude for you coming to the stage because it's very also recent and there's a lot of intensity. And yeah, as Liz was saying, you were so comfortable on stage. Like it seems like you actually processed this already, which is surprising for having shared stories that happened to me, I don't know, like 2 years ago on stage because they're just probably, I feel like they're not ready for the stage, or probably I am not ready for the stage and that story. So thank you so much for bringing the story with your honesty and your openness, which is one of the things that we value the most in storytelling in Lisboa, this vulnerability of our human experience. I'm also a holistic therapist, not the one that your ex was. But
no magnets taping to heads.
The magnets can be fine. It's just how you use them.
Exactly. Like 2024 was such an intense year for, I think, the whole humanity. And every time I speak with someone and they start talking about their summer last year, I was like, shit, that was intense for everyone. Yeah, just not to undermine your story, but it feels like 2024 was testing us. And just going back to the beginning of your story, you mentioned that you were a newly bisexual. Would you mind elaborating a little bit on that?
Yes, I have the atypical story. So I came out as gay quite young, and I identified as a gay man most of my life, very out and proud. I led the gay student groups and protests. And I moved to Brooklyn when I was 19 and was very involved in the queer scene there, but was very much identified as a gay man.
Yeah.
But the thing is, I love being gay. When you hang out with a lot of gay people, especially gay men, it can become very isolated or insulated among just gay men. Especially in New York, there's this cabal of gay men that kind of run the city.
What? What?
Oh yeah. Anyways, this is all to say you find yourself hanging out almost exclusively with gay men, and sometimes your groups will mix the bar, but there can be some kind of toxic reinforcements around barriers around sexuality.
Totally.
You start talking about women or being bisexual, there's a bit of traitor vibes. I think that there is this thing where queerness can be such a rejection of compulsory heterosexuality that any whiff of heterosexuality can be seen as the enemy. And so I think from that, I just allowed that to reinforce the boundaries around my sexuality. And then actually during COVID, I left New York. I went out to the woods, just spent every day trying to become more embodied. I was literally trying to move my body more to spread the spirit into my fingertips. I was playing with sticks and jumping around and bringing out this childlike wonder. And somewhere in all of that, I was like, wait, I actually don't really have boundaries around who I find attractive sexually and emotionally connect with. Women are so beautiful also, and non-binary people, trans people. All of a sudden I was like, oh, what have I been doing? Like, why have I been limiting myself in identifying as a gay man and having these sort of barriers around who I will and won't approach? And so I just dissolved those boundaries and went on Hinge.
It's really interesting to hear you say this, because actually my first thought when you said newly bisexual was, I guess, maybe the standard person's thought,
Right.
or the standard like culturally thought of like you were straight and then you decided to explore. And so to hear it was the opposite, it totally actually makes sense. But when you say dissolve those boundaries, I'm wondering if that is an internal process or external, but you were going to continue with Hinge. So it was definitely external.
Yeah, it was both. There was unlearning, I think, that I had to do within myself. And then there was also the putting it into practice. I was like, okay, let's explore this. Let's see if this is really there.
Was it an idea in your head a little bit like, oh, wait, maybe I'm attracted to more than I've been conditioned to think I'm attracted to? And then was it almost an experiment? Let's see if it's real?
A bit. Honestly, yeah. I had a strong feeling that it was real, but of course, theory only gets you so far. Like applied mechanics are like the thing. Sorry, I'm reading like 3-body problem and everything is like applied physics. But so I went on Hinge and I on things you should know about me. I was like, I've been a gay guy for 10 years. I was also in that moment like exploring boundaries around my gender. So it was like, I joked that like I went into COVID as a gay man and came out as a non-binary bisexual.
Quite a transformation.
On my profile, it was like, what's one thing you should know about me? And it was like, I've identified as a gay man for the last 10 years, but now I'm like non-binary, non-bisexual. And I felt like this was a good filter because there's a lot of folks out there that don't really want to date a bisexual person, and that's their prerogative. But I wanted to filter out those folks at the beginning and not have to deal with that later on. And there was a wonderful young woman who reached out to me, replying to that part specifically, and was like, I'm also queer, and we ended up dating for 6-7 months, and was fantastic. Didn't work out in the long run, but it wasn't for lack of my own bisexuality. And yeah, from there, I just grew to accept this as part of my identity now. And I'm excited by it. It's very much in line with my general ethos of open to experience and expanding the boundaries of the body and everything.
That sounds all amazing. And I think now this question is coming more to the newer generations also, and for people from our generation, listening to this sounds amazing because it's something I actually, never thought about it truly. And speaking about that, you were saying in the story that you were falling for everyone, and for everyone was beautiful, and I was falling in love for everyone. And I was like,
yes,
yeah, that sounds amazing. But
yes,
what was about this guy Martin that actually got your attention? Can you tell us about a little bit more about him, how he looked? Do you have a type?
Yeah, I had several loves on that trip, I will say.
Are you a Cancer?
I'm a Leo Cancer cusp.
Yes. I was like, this guy has so much water in his chart because I relate to you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Got a lot of water to give for sure. And Martin was one. He was really hot. That is there. But yeah, I think that the lens of this bisexuality also colors the story of who I had this raw visceral attraction to and who I ended up actually becoming really connected with. But I think the thing that stuck out with Martin is that I just kept seeing him. It just kept happening, these sort of kismet moments where I was like, yeah, there are 2,000 people here. Why do I keep running into you? I'm seeing you in the lake. I'm seeing you at therapy. I'm seeing you at the meal. I look over, and then that's in the story. That's where it came to a head, was like, we're in this tantric orgasm thing. And I haven't even done the subtle maneuvering of trying to lay down next to this guy. I had just laid down and there he is again. So I'm like, okay, the universe wants us to touch mouths gently. And yeah, I don't really have a type, but he was just very beautiful.
Like, you don't have a type, but he was your type. Were you guys locking eyes?
So no, it wasn't. There was one brief moment. There was like a second where we locked eyes. And that is the moment that I attribute as the most erotic moment in my life. I was like, mostly my eyes are closed, but I keep looking over at him and I'm seeing the sun caress his body as he's putting his hand down his little festival shorts. And then as I look up, he like just briefly like it was even that thing where like you can tell someone's looking at you, but even if you can't see them, like he must have felt that, I guess, because he opened his eyes at the exact moment that my eyes looked up at him. And we like locked eyes for that moment of intensity and then both looked away. And that moment was the full body, like, chills basically.
But don't you think that he was probably also queer and at some level? Because you mentioned, oh, this girl's certainly his wife. And I was like, what? How can you tell that he was his wife?
Yeah, she told me.
Oh, so you talked to her?
Wait, tell me how she told you.
Yeah, first of all, could totally be queer. There's a lot of bisexual people that are married at festivals, for sure, especially at a festival like this. But how it really confirmed it, from right after the tantric cosmic orgasm, the way they were just hugging and talking, I was like, okay, that's his partner. But then later on, on the last night, there was an ecstatic dance, and here I see this guy again, but now he's not alone, he's with his wife. And so I make small talk to do some digging. I'm trying to get the full information. I'm trying to like look for an opening or something. Because at this point, I'm still like, okay, now maybe bisexual three-way. I'm trying to angle for that at this point.
It's amazing. Yes.
But so she ends up saying, oh yeah, my husband, this, that, and the next. And I don't end up really pursuing. This is the other part of me and the unsaid, is that as forthcoming as I may be in situations like this, when I get a little bit crushed, I actually become quite quiet and am not great at pursuing crushes. I get a little nervous and shy and end up not saying a lot.
That actually struck me in the story. And I think it's a really universal experience when it becomes like this emotional thing. You can pull back and get shy, but it's like this willingness to lay next to somebody, to be masturbating and be like getting in touch with their sexual self. You're chasing freedom in a way, right? Like freedom from your boundaries and stuff like that. But then when it comes to just to say and let your crush be known to Martine, you didn't go there.
Yeah, it's a big conundrum in my life. I touched on this briefly, but for a while I was very involved in the BDSM and leather fetish scene. Not just leather, but like latex and robe and all that stuff. I was involved in that scene as a photojournalist, but also a participant and like a cultural, it's like a beyond a sexual thing. It's also just like a social environment. And one part of me can be very forthcoming, very forward and very no big deal when it comes to sex. Especially in environments like that, where it's almost like a hobby. It's like, we're all here at the sex convention.
Yeah.
It's very easy to talk through. But as soon as I get a whiff of like emotional attachment, that's when all of a sudden I'm like, I don't know, am I good enough for this person? Are they gonna like me back? And that's where I start to get really shy, it's so ironic. If there's like a dark room at a party or something, no problem. But as soon as I have to actually be a bit vulnerable, I can get there. I can be deeply vulnerable with someone, but it's really hard for me to make the leap, especially if I don't know for sure if the person is receptive. If someone else has made the first move, it's one thing, but especially in a queer context where I'm like, is this person straight? I think there's trauma from being younger and closeted and like having crushes on your friends and stuff and realizing like if they found out they might eat you up or make fun of you or something. And so I think there's some lingering trauma there.
Totally. Yeah. I was thinking also about these platonic things that we as a queer community have because, mainly we grew up falling in love for people that are not available for us. But then we become adults and this kind of translates to our relationships. And I was going to ask you if you feel that way. Have you felt that you lost opportunities because of that with other people, with other relationships? And also that I see nowadays, right now I'm in Brazil, I'm in Carnival, and I lived in Brazil for several years, like 6 years ago. And I see how different is now the relationship between people, even grown-ups or newer generations. And I don't know if it's media effect or other things, but it seems like it's becoming harder and harder to connect with people because everyone is just trying to give this Instagram face, even in reality. So everyone is trying to look pretty and look at me, and it's harder and harder to connect with people. And no one is ever like willing to cross that discomfort of talking to someone and just going through this uncomfortable phase of, give me your number. Do you want to kiss me? Let's have a drink. So yeah, I'm wondering how's your stand on this dating life nowadays? If you think you've been always like this, do you think you change or society is changing and we're becoming more distant?
Yeah, I definitely think that social media has contributed a lot to disconnection. I think there's like this obsession with mystery. And because social media has so much of this highlight reel thing, a lot of people I feel like have taken this like ultra mysterious air, which I think is really just a bit of a front for either a low self-esteem or also just maybe there's not so much going on there. They remain really mysterious and they want you to think that, oh, what's behind the curtain? But actually there's not so much. It's just brain rot videos and an obsession with social media itself, self-repeating thing. But I do think generally like people have a harder time connecting now. It's also hard because if you go on Twitter on any given day, there'll be like, a video of two people like kissing in a bar and then a million people making fun of them. Or yesterday there was a video of a guy, like a college kid, like drinking a beer and like looking a little smug and everyone's, look at this fucking loser. And so I think that there is this certain innate fear that anything that you do can and will be recorded and then presented for an audience of strangers to potentially make fun of you. And even if there's not a camera around in that moment, I think there is this latent fear around being embarrassing because we're spending so much time watching other people that we assume we're being watched and judging others with like how we think we're being judged. And so for me, I'm aware of this. I try to move past it. I'm like currently trying to fight my social media addictions, plural. I have sworn off dating for the moment. I wanted to give myself some time after the last relationship to work through that, process that, heal that. This thing of not saying, I think it also is a problem for me, even in moments like that. Like even in the relationship, there were so many moments where I didn't say what I wanted to say. I didn't express my true feelings because either I was embarrassed to, or I didn't feel safe to, or I didn't have the self-esteem to do it, to stick up for myself. And I wasn't with someone who made me feel safe in expressing myself, which for me now has emerged as the ultimate like green flag and or red flag. But if I'm with someone and they are speaking for me, cutting me off to interject, not letting me get my full feelings out, and like making me feel unsafe in expressing myself, it's no go. That's what kept happening with this person. I would try to say something. I would sit there listening as they monologued and talked. I was reading like these like Buddhism books about interacting and like fighting. Thich Nhat Hanh has this great book, How to Fight. And it's radical listening. Just listen. Even if you don't agree, like just listen and just listen until it's your turn. But you don't have to like interject. And so I would sit there and listening. And then it would become my turn finally, and I would get half a sentence and they would just jump right back in over me and start talking over me. And so now that's what I look for is a willingness to communicate bidirectionally. And it's part of what I go into in that story, right? The person that I met, Mafalda in the story, is an amazing listener. And we sat there talking with each other for hours. And even now we talk like every day still and has become one of my best friends.
And about Mafalda, you said radical listening, and I know that you, in the story, said that you practiced radical honesty with Mafalda, and I want an example of that. But I also wanted to know, was Mafalda also a sexual connection, or was it just emotional?
Yeah, so this is the sort of semi-tragic, semi-beautiful story of me and Mafalda. So me and Mafalda were actually sharing a tent at that festival. We arrived there together. We didn't know each other super well, but we had some mutual friends and it just became this convenient thing. And the first few nights, just talking, nothing happened, but there was like a little bit of a tension in the air, a little bit of a sexual tension in the air. I don't know. And then as the week went on, there was one day in particular in which we both participated in a ceremony.
Ceremony means plant medicine or?
Yeah. It was plant medicine. It was an MDMA ceremony, which I don't normally like edge into, but this person, it was this very spiritual way of approaching. And I was like, okay, mind you, I spent my 20s like raving crazy, but had moved away from drugs in powder form in my 30s. But I was like, you know what? This is like a sort of a spiritual setting. We're like at the sunset by the lake. Sure. We're all going to sit around in a circle and take a low dose of MDMA. Like at a festival, my dad just died.
Absolutely.
The person administering it had done some work in the alternative therapy arena. And the thing that jumped out to me was this description that it would quiet some part of your amygdala and the fear goes away, right? And I was dealing with a lot of fear. And fear is a big part of the unsaid, right? I'm afraid that if I say something, I'm going to end up getting hurt through like a rejection or something. And by the end of this evening, things did become sexual between me and Mafalda. And nothing too intense, a little bit of light play, but that kind of opened up the floodgates. So then for the next like month or so, we went through this somewhat confusing, somewhat beautiful, somewhat tragic kind of thing where there was some sexual contact. It was wonderful. It felt really special and beautiful. Ultimately, she really cherished our friendship and didn't want a sexual romance to get in the way, which I think also totally fair because I was coming out of this other relationship and was not really in the right place to get into a relationship. And I think she recognized that. And so after a time, we stopped. We both agreed, okay, gotta stop having sex and just focus on our friendship. And that's actually been really successful. I wasn't sure if it was just this person's easy way of letting me down, but no, in the end, actually, we've become really good friends. I would consider them actually one of my best friends here in Portugal. We still talk every day and hang out all the time and have reached a place that feels really genuine.
And I love that about your story, that you have these two separate relationships, right? Going on, you have this Martine relationship that's sort of fantasy. It's safe because it's inside of your own person. Even that erotic moment, you're solo but next to him. And then you have Mafalda, which develops into a real relationship that's not so easy to define and endures. Okay, so once I went to tantric speed dating a long time ago, and it was actually a really interesting experience because afterwards I was like, oh no, I like small talk. You were supposed to go to each person and one person you would hug for 4 minutes and whatever. And one of the activities with the person was that I was supposed to look into their eyes and hold their hands for 3 minutes, let's say. So I did this whole thing. And at the end, I was just like, oh, wait, I actually just want to talk to people and know their name. We're skipping too far and it doesn't feel right. And the guy who stared into my eyes for 3 minutes, he came up to me afterwards. And in this very soft, tender voice, he said, I really felt that connection with you. And internally, I had this feeling like, are you kidding me? I felt nothing. I felt nothing in my body when I looked at him for these 3 minutes. And it's like sad, right? And I just nodded at him or whatever. And then it ends and we never see each other again. But I'm wondering with Martine, do you feel that it was something that you held or was it actual energy between the two? Because I also fully believe in like nonverbal connection. And yeah.
It's so hard to know. I've certainly entertained fantasies in which the passion is returned. There was parts of me that felt something there, which is why every time I saw him, I like grew a little bit more attached because I'm like, something's here. His eyes are lingering on me a little bit, but it could have fully been invented for sure. I think there was like an intrigue. I think often, for whatever reason in my life, because I don't know if he was straight or bi or not, but there's a lot of straight men that are intrigued by me and entertain a certain attraction to me and maybe sometimes even cross the line. But ultimately it's this like, I'm just like playing with an idea. I'm not like gay now, but there's like something there. Like I photographed a lot of my friends like nude and stuff when I was in college. And there's just always been there's this thing. So I don't know if it was like that where this person is like trying on for size. Oh, maybe that would be cool. Or if it was pure coincidence and just the like thing. But I'd like to think that in a space like that, I think everyone's a little bisexual. I'm just going to say it. And I think in a festival like that, people that are maybe a little bisexual allow themselves to be a little more bisexual. I don't know. I think there was a little something there, but it's remained a mystery. I didn't get his number. I don't even actually know his real name and we'll never know.
Yeah. And I love that too. I actually think those connections are so fun that feel insanely intense, but you never know if it's real or not or whatever, but it doesn't matter in a way because you still get that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
When I listened to your story for the first time and now talking about this, it reminded me of parts of my work because I work with a lot of people as a massage as well when the time is out. And I had in the last couple of years experiences like this of feeling this incredible love for people I just met, a straight man, and they feel it back and they're like, wait, what is this? And it reminds us, and I bring this reminder that we are all human and we all share this unconditional universal love for everyone. And it feels like you got into this place with Martin and it was just, we can love each other without being in a romantic relationship.
Yes, it felt more like that. It felt more like a certain human connection that didn't necessarily need to be defined around something else.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally believe there was something there. Also probably for him as well, because from when you say it's like there's something going back to you.
You can feel it.
Yeah, it's just this emotional feeling. And also the other thing that amazed me is sometimes life is crazy, and then you had this festival. It's like life knew that you needed this festival after all the things that was happening, and that happened to me when I broke up with my ex 1 year and a half ago. And I had this long trip with all of my friends from Brazil in Berlin. And it was such a healing experience to be there with my friends, brokenhearted. And I was thinking, like, who knew? Who knew that I was going to need this trip with my friends? So yeah, it feels like your festival was a gift from the universe. But do you feel that you got what you needed from the festival? Do you find healing? How is Zach today doing?
Zach's doing okay. Zach is still going through a lot. Do feel that the festival was very healing. I think like I need that once a month. You go to these places and you do all this yoga and you do all this meditation, and then like I come back and I forget to meditate. My pineal gland has recalcified, and so I try to hold on to that and I try to get myself there. But I think I do often succumb to the trap of getting too focused on work, getting too focused on just social media and crap and blah blah. But I'm trying to like. My relationship with Mafalda has been very helpful. She's really encouraged me to re-engage socially, do the stuff that I love. I've started working with a group doing some agroforestry stuff, like planting trees. I just booked a workshop in Tamara, which is this like...
We know, okay, this is so funny because, well, let's call back right now to season 1.
Okay.
Season 1 has a story from Tamara.
Nice.
So... Amazing. So now you need to come back to the stage and tell your Tamara story because it might be a very different story than the one that we already know.
Yeah. So I'm signed up for their workshop, which is cooperating with animals. So I'll be like working with their dog sanctuary and the rat temple and some horses.
Boars.
Yes.
And I feel like I've come back inward a bit, and I'm like now in the process of trying to get embodied again. Everything with my dad. I'm still processing that. The loss of a parent is so strange. More than anything is the word that keeps coming up for me. It's sad, of course, but it's also just strange. You're like, what do you mean I can't call you? There's been so many moments recently that I've wanted to call him for advice and I'm just like, can't. And again, it feels like this sort of running into a wall kind of thing. But I feel like I'm in a better place generally. Maybe. I'm still not dating. Although I recently was traveling and had a lot of sex. That was nice. So getting back out there a bit and like microdosing love for a weekend, love for 3 days was nice.
Actually, that can be really healing. It's contained. I like that microdosing love. Zach, thank you so much for being with us. I do just want to mention, if anybody does want to listen to the Tamara story, it is episode 6 of season 1, Sylvia. She arrives on a bicycle from Germany to Tamara. It's amazing. So good. But I just wanted to ask you one last question, which is, how has it been for you today revisiting your story?
It's been nice. It's been exciting. I will say I like almost cried again at the same point of the story that I almost told while telling it, which is the moment where the Russian therapist is yelling like, hug this person like you want a hug from your father or from your family, from your parents. And actually, like, I did a pretty good job hiding it on stage, but like I was like I could feel the tears coming and I had to push past it. For me, this story has a happy ending, which is the wonderful friendship I have. And it makes me want to sign up for another storytelling event.
That's what I was going to ask. When are you getting on stage again? It sounds like your life is full of plenty of opportunities to create stories, which is always a good thing.
That's true. What's the next theme?
That's it for this episode of What Lingers.
Please make sure you subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an episode. And also follow us on Instagram @StorytellingLisboa to keep up to date.
What Lingers is a podcast from the team behind Storytelling Lisboa and is produced by Jonny Bunyan. He's amazing.
Thank you so much for listening and join us again for another edition of What Lingers.
See you next week.